Chapter 11 of the Wouldbegoods. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Hazel and Alan Chant. The Wouldbegoods by E. Nesbit, being the further adventures of the Treasure Seekers. Chapter 11. The Benevolent Bar.
The tramp was very dusty about the feet and legs, and his clothes were very ragged and dirty, but he had cheerful twinkly grey eyes, and he touched his cap to the girls when he spoke to us, though a little as though he would rather not. We were on top of the big wall of the Roman ruin in the 3-tree pasture. We had just concluded a severe siege with bows and arrows, the ones that were given us to make up for the pistol that was confiscated after the sad but not sinful occasion when it shot a fox. To avoid accidents that you would be sorry for afterwards, Oswald, in his thoughtfulness, had decreed that everyone has to wear wire masks. Luckily, there were plenty of these, because a man who lived in the moat house once went to Rome, where they throw hundreds and thousands at each other in play and call it a comfort battle, or battaglia di confetti. That's real Italian. And he wanted to get up that sort of thing among the village people, but they were too beastly slack, so he chucked it. And in the attic were the wire masks he brought home with him from Rome, which people wear to prevent the nasty comfits from getting in their mouths and eyes. So we were all armed to the teeth with masks and arrows, but in attacking or defending a fort, your real strength is not in your equipment, but in your power of shove. Oswald, Alice, Noel and Denny defended the fort. We were much the strongest side, but that was not how Dicky and Oswald picked up. The others got in, it is true, but that was only because an arrow hit Dicky on the nose. It bled quarts as usual, though hit only through the wire mask. Then he put into dock for repairs, and while the defending party weren't looking, he sneaked up the wall at the back and shoved Oswald off and fell on top of him, so that the fort, now that it had lost its gallant young leader, the life and soul of the besieged party, was of course soon overpowered and had to surrender. Then we sat on the top and ate some peppermints Albert's uncle brought us in a bag of from Maidstone when he went to fetch away the Roman pottery we tried to sell the antiquities with. The battle was over, and peace raged among us as we sat in the sun on the big wall and looked at the fields, all blue and swimming in the heat. We saw the tramp coming through the beet field. He made a dusty blot on the fair scene. When he saw us, he came close to the wall and touched his cap, as I have said, and remarked,
"Excuse me interrupting of your sports, young gentlemen and ladies, but if you could so far oblige as to tell a labouring man the way to the nearest pub, it's a dry day and no error." "The Rose and Crown is the best pub," said Dicky, "and the landlady is a friend of ours. It's about a mile if you go by the field path." "Law love a duck," said the tramp, "a mile's a long way, and walking's a dry job this here weather." We said we agreed with him. "Upon my sacred," said the tramp, "if there were a pump handy, I believe I'd take a turn at it. I would indeed, so help me if I wouldn't, though water always upsets me and makes me hand shaky." We had not cared much about tramps since the adventure of the villainous sailor man and the Tower of Mystery, but we had the dogs on the wall with us. Lady was awfully difficult to get up on account of her long deerhound legs, and the position was a strong one and easy to defend. Besides, the tramp did not look like that bad sailor nor talk like it, and we considerably outnumbered the tramp anyway. Alice nudged Oswald and said something about Sir Philip Sidney, and the tramp's need being greater than his, so Oswald was obliged to go to the hole in the top of the wall where we store provisions during sieges, and get out the bottle of ginger beer, which he had gone without when the others had theirs, so as to drink it when he got really thirsty. Meanwhile Alice said, "We've got some ginger beer. My brother's getting it. I hope you won't mind drinking out of our glass. We can't wash it, you know, unless we rinse it out with a little ginger beer." "Don't ye do it, miss," he said eagerly. "Never waste good liquor on washing." The glass was beside us on the wall. Oswald filled it with ginger beer and handed down the foaming tankard to the tramp. He had to lie on his young stomach to do this. The tramp was really quite polite, one of nature's gentlemen, and a man as well, we found out afterwards. He said,
"Here's to you," before he drank. Then he drained the glass until the rim rested on his nose. "Swelp me, but I was dry," he said. "Don't seem to matter much what it is this weather to it, so long as it's something wet. Well, here's thanking you." "You're very welcome," said Dora. "I'm glad you liked it." "Like it?" said he. "I don't suppose you know what it's like to have a thirst on you. Talk of free schools and free libraries and free baths and wash houses and such. Why don't someone start free drinks? He'd be an hero, he would. I'd vote for him any day of the week and one over. If you don't object, I'll set down a bit and put on a pipe." He sat down on the grass and began to smoke. We asked him questions about himself, and he told us many of his secret sorrows, especially about there being no work nowadays for an honest man. And at last he dropped asleep in the middle of a story about a vestry he worked for that hadn't acted fair and square by him like he had by them, or it. I don't know if vestry is singular or plural, and we went home. But before we went, we held a hurried council, and collected what money we could from the little we had with us. It was 9 halfpenny, and wrapped it in an old envelope Dicky had in his pocket, and put it gently on the billowing middle of the poor tramp's sleeping waistcoat, so that he would find it when he woke. None of the dogs said a single syllable whilst we were doing this, so we knew they believed him to be poor but honest, and we always find it safe to take their word for things like that. As we went home, a brooding silence fell upon us. We found out afterwards that those words of the poor tramp's about free drinks had sunk deep in all our hearts and rankled there.
After dinner we went out and sat with our feet in the stream. People tell you it makes your grub disagree with you to do this just after meals, but it never hurts us. There is a fallen willow across the stream that just seats the 8 of us, only the ones at the end can't get their feet in the water properly because of the bushes, so we kept changing places. We had got some licorice root to chew. This helps thought. Dora broke a peaceful silence with this speech. "Free drinks." The words awoke a response in every breast. "I wonder someone doesn't," H.O. said, leaning back until he nearly toppled in, and was only saved by Oswald and Alice at their own deadly peril. "Do for goodness sake sit still, H.O., observed Alice. "It would be a glorious act. I wish we could." "What, sit still?" asked H.O. "No, my child," replied Oswald. "Most of us can do that when we try. Your angel sister is only wishing to set up free drinks for the poor and thirsty." "Not for all of them," Alice said, "just a few. Change places now, Dicky. My feet aren't properly wet at all." It is very difficult to change places safely on the willow. The changers have to crawl over the laps of the others, while the rest sit tight and hold on for all they're worth. But the hard task was accomplished, and then Alice went on. "And we couldn't do it for always. Only a day or two, just while our money held out. Eiffel Tower lemonade's the best, and you get a jolly lot of it for your money too. There must be a great many sincerely thirsty persons go along the Dover Road every day." "It wouldn't be bad. We've got a little chink between us," said Oswald. "And then think how the poor grateful creatures would linger and tell us about their inmost sorrows. It would be most frightfully interesting. We could write all their agonied life histories down afterwards, like all the year round Christmas numbers. Oh, do let's." Alice was wriggling so with earnestness that Dicky thumped her to make her calm. "We might do it just for one day," Oswald said, "but it wouldn't be much. Only a drop in the ocean compared with the enormous dryness of all the people in the whole world. Still, every little helps, as the mermaid said when she cried into the sea." "I know a piece of poetry about that," Denny said.
Small things are best. Care and unrest to wealth and rank are given. But little things, on little wings, do something or other, I forget what, but it means the same as Oswald was saying about the mermaid. "What are you going to call it?" asked Noel, coming out of a dream. "Call what?" "The free drinks game." "It's a horrid shame if the free drinks game doesn't have a name. You would be to blame if anyone came and—" "Oh, shut up," remarked Dicky. "You've been making that rot up all the time we've been talking instead of listening properly." Dicky hates poetry. I don't mind it so very much myself, especially Macaulay's and Kipling's and Noel's. There was a lot more lame and dame and name and game and things, and now I've forgotten it," Noel said in a gloom. "Never mind," Alice answered. "It'll come back to you in the silent watches of the night. You see if it doesn't. But really, Noel's right. It ought to have a name. Free Drinks Company, Thirsty Travellers' Rest, The Travellers' Joy." These names were suggested, but not cared for extra. Then somebody said, I think it was Oswald, "Why not The House Beautiful?" "It can't be a house. It must be in the road. It'll only be a stall." "The Stall Beautiful is simply silly," Oswald said. "The Bar Beautiful, then," said Dicky, who knows what the Rose and Crown bar is like inside, which of course is hidden from girls. "Oh, wait a minute," cried the dentist, snapping his fingers like he always does when he's trying to remember things. "I thought of something, only Daisy tickled me and it's gone. I know, let's call it the Benevolent Bar." It was exactly right, and told the whole truth in 2 words. Benevolent showed it was free, and bar showed what was free, e.g. things to drink. The Benevolent Bar it was.
We went home to prepare for the morrow, for of course we meant to do it the very next day. Procrastination is you know what, and delays are dangerous. If we had waited long we might have happened to spend our money on something else. The utmost secrecy had to be observed because Mrs. Pettigrew hates tramps. Most people do who keep fowls. Albert's uncle was in London till the next evening, so we could not consult him, but we know he is always chock full of intelligent sympathy with the poor and needy. Acting with the deepest disguise, we made an awning to cover the Benevolent Bar keepers from the searching eyes of the monarch of the skies. We found some old striped sunblinds in the attic, and the girls sewed them together. They were not very big when they'd done this, so we added the girls' striped petticoats. I am sorry their petticoats turn up constantly in my narrative, but they really are very useful, especially when the band is cut off. The girls borrowed Mrs. Pettigrew's sewing machine. They could not ask her leave without explanations, which we did not wish to give just then, and she had lent it to them before. They took it into the cellar to work it, so that she should not hear the noise and ask bothering questions. They had to balance it on one end of the beer stand. It was not easy. While they were doing the sewing, we boys went out and got willow poles and chopped the twigs off, and got ready as well as we could to put up the awning.
When we returned, a detachment of us went down to the shop in the village for Eiffel Tower lemonade. We bought 7 and 6pence worth. Then we made a great label to say what the bar was for. There was nothing else to do except make rosettes out of a blue sash of Daisy's to show we belonged to the Benevolent Bar. The next day was as hot as ever. We rose early from our innocent slumbers and went out to the Dover Road, to the spot we had marked down the day before. It was at a crossroads, so as to be able to give drinks to as many people as possible. We hid the awning and poles behind the hedge and went home to Brecker. After break we got the big zinc bath they wash clothes in, and after filling it with clean water we just had to empty it again because it was too heavy to lift. So we carried it vacant to the trysting spot and left H.O. and Noel to guard it while we went and fetched separate pails of water. Very heavy work, and no one who wasn't really benevolent would have bothered about it for an instant. Oswald alone carried 3 pails, so did Dicky and the dentist. Then we rolled down some empty barrels and stood up 3 of them by the roadside and put planks on them. This made a very first-class table, and we covered it with the best tablecloth we could find in the linen cupboard. We brought out several glasses and some teacups, not the best ones. Oswald was firm about that. And the kettle and spirit lamp and the teapot, in case any weary tramp woman fancied a cup of tea instead of Eiffel Tower. H.O. and Noel had to go down to the shop for tea. They need not have grumbled. They had not carried any of the water. And their having to go the second time was only because we forgot to tell them to get some real lemons to put on the bar to show what the drink would be like when you get it. The man at the shop kindly gave us tick for the lemons, and we cashed up most of our next week's pocket money. 2 or 3 people passed while we were getting things ready, but no one said anything except the man who said, "Bloomin' Sunday school treat," and as it was too early in the day for anyone to be thirsty, we did not stop the wayfarers to tell them their thirst could be slaked without cost at our benevolent bar. But when everything was quite ready and our blue rosettes fastened upon our breasts over our benevolent hearts, we stuck up the great placard we had made with "Benevolent Bar, free drinks to all weary travellers," in white wadding on red calico, like Christmas decorations in church. We had meant to fasten this to the edge of the awning, but we had to pin it to the front of the tablecloth, because I'm sorry to say the awning went wrong from the first. We could not drive the willow poles into the road, it was much too hard, and in the ditch it was too soft, besides being no use. So we just had to cover our benevolent heads with our hats and take it in turns to go into the shade of the tree on the other side of the road, for we had pitched our table on the sunny side of the way, of course, relying on our broken reed-like awning and wishing to give it a fair chance. Everything looked very nice, and we longed to see somebody really miserable coming along, so as to be able to relieve their distress.
A man and a woman were the first. They stopped and stared, but when Alice said, free drinks, aren't you thirsty?" they said, "No, thank you," and went on. Then came a person from the village. He didn't even say thank you when we asked him, and Oswald began to fear it might be like the awful time when we wandered about on Christmas Day trying to find poor persons and persuade them to eat our conscience pudding. But a man in a blue jersey and a red bundle eased Oswald's fears by being willing to drink a glass of lemonade, and even to say, "Thank you, I'm sure," quite nicely. After that it was better. As we had foreseen, there were plenty of thirsty people walking along the Dover Road, and even some from the crossroad. We had had the pleasure of seeing 19 tumblers drained to the dregs ere we tasted any ourselves. Nobody asked for tea. More people went by than we gave lemonade to. Some wouldn't have it because they were too grand. One man told us he could pay for his own liquor when he was dry, which, praise be, he wasn't over and above at present. And others asked if we hadn't any beer, and when we said no, they said it showed what sort we were, as if the sort were not a good one, which it is. And another man said, "Slops again. You never get nothing for nothing, not this side of heaven you don't. Look at the bloomin' blue ribbon on 'em. Oh, law!" and went on quite sadly without having a drink. Our pigman, who helped us on the Tower of Mystery Day, went by, and we hailed him and explained it all to him and gave him a drink and asked him to call as he came back. He liked it all and said we were a real good sort. How different from the man who wanted the beer. Then he went on. One thing I didn't like, and that was the way boys began to gather. Of course we could not refuse to give drinks to any traveller who was old enough to ask for it, but when one boy had had 3 glasses of lemonade and asked for another, Oswald said, "I think you've had jolly well enough. You can't be really thirsty after all that lot." The boy said, "Oh, can't I? You'll just see if I can't," and went away. Presently he came back with 4 other boys, all bigger than Oswald, and they all asked for lemonade. Oswald gave it to the 4 new ones, but he was determined in his behaviour to the other one and wouldn't give him a drop. Then the 5 of them went and sat on a gate a little way off and kept laughing in a nasty way, and whenever a boy went by they called out, "I say, here's a go!" and as often as not the new boy would hang about with them. It was disquieting, for though they had nearly all had lemonade, we could see it had not made them friendly. A great glorious glow of goodness gladdened. Those go all together and are called alliteration. Our heart when we saw our own tramp coming down the road. The dogs did not growl at him as they had at the boys or the beer man. I did not say before that we had the dogs with us, but of course we had, because we had promised never to go out without them. Oswald said, "Hello," and the tramp said, "Hello." Then Alice said, "You see, we've taken your advice. We're giving free drinks. Doesn't it all look nice?" "It does that," said the tramp. "I don't mind if I do."
So we gave him 2 glasses of lemonade succeedingly, and thanked him for giving us the idea. He said we were very welcome, and if we'd no objection he'd sit down a bit and put on a pipe. He did, and after talking a little more he fell asleep. Drinking anything seemed to end in sleep with him. I always thought it was only beer and things made people sleepy, but he was not so. When he was asleep he rolled into the ditch, but it did not wake him up. The boys were getting very noisy, and they began to shout things and to make silly noises with their mouths. And when Oswald and Dicky went over to them and told them just to chuck it, they were worse than ever. I think perhaps Oswald and Dicky might have fought and settled them, though there were 11, yet back to back you can always do it against overwhelming numbers in a book. Only Alice called out, "Oswald, here's some more, come back." We went. 3 big men were coming down the road, very red and hot and not amiable looking. They stopped in front of the Benevolent bar and slowly read the wadding and the red stuff label. Then one of them said he was blessed, or something like that, and another said he was too. The third one said, "Blessed or not, a drink's a drink. Blue ribbon though, by..." a word you ought not to say, though it is in the Bible and the Catechism as well. "Let's have a liquor, little missy." The dogs were growling, but Oswald thought it best not to take any notice of what the dogs said, but to give these men each a drink. So he did. They drank, but not as if they cared about it very much, and then they set down their glasses on the table, a liberty no one else had entered into, and began to try and chaff Oswald. Oswald said in an undervoice to H.O., "Just take charge. I want to speak to the girls a sec. Call if you want anything." Then he drew the others away, to say he thought there had been enough of it, and considering the boys and the new 3 men, perhaps we'd better chuck it and go home. We'd been benevolent nearly 4 hours anyway. While this conversation and the objections of the others were going on, H.O. perpetuated an act which nearly wrecked the Benevolent bar. Of course Oswald was not an eye or ear witness of what happened, but from what H.O. said in the calmer moments of later life, I think this was about what happened. One of the big disagreeable men said to H.O.,
"Ain't got such a thing as a drop of spirit, have you?" H.O. said no, we hadn't, only lemonade and tea. "Lemonade and tea, blank, bad word I told you about, and blazes," replied the bad character, for such he afterwards proved to be. "What's that, then?" He pointed to a bottle named Dewar's Whisky, which stood on the table near the spirit kettle. "Oh, is that what you want?" said H.O. kindly. The man is understood to have said he should bloomin' well think so, but H.O. is not sure about the bloomin'. He held out his glass with about half the lemonade in it, and H.O. generously filled up the tumbler out of the bottle labelled Dewar's Whisky. The man took a great drink, and then suddenly he spat out what happened to be left in his mouth just then, and began to swear. It was then that Oswald and Dicky rushed upon the scene. The man was shaking his fist in H.O.'s face, and H.O. was still holding on to the bottle we had brought out the methylated spirit in for the lamp in case of anyone wanting tea, which they hadn't. "If I was Jim," said the second ruffian, for such indeed they were, when he had snatched the bottle from H.O. and smelt it, "I'd chuck the whole show over the hedge, so I would, and you young gutter snipes after it, so I wouldn't." Oswald saw in a moment that in point of strength, if not numbers, he and his party were outmatched, and the unfriendly boys were drawing gladly near. It is no shame to signal for help when in distress. The best ships do it every day. Oswald shouted, "Help! Help!" Before the words were out of his brave yet trembling lips, our own tramp leapt like an antelope from the ditch and said, "Now then, what's up?" The biggest of the three men immediately knocked him down. He lay still. The biggest then said, "Come on, any more of you, come on."
Oswald was so enraged at this cowardly attack that he actually hit out at the big man, and he really got one in just above the belt. Then he shut his eyes because he felt that now all was indeed up. There was a shout and a scuffle, and Oswald opened his eyes in astonishment at finding himself still whole and unimpaired. Our own tramp had artfully simulated insensibleness to get the men off their guard, and then had suddenly got his arms round a leg each of two of the men, and pulled them to the ground, helped by Dicky, who saw his game and rushed in at the same time, exactly like Oswald would have done if he had not had his eyes shut, ready to meet his doom. The unpleasant boys shouted, and the third man tried to help his unrespectable friends, now on their backs, involved in a desperate struggle with our own tramp, who was on top of them, accompanied by Dicky. It all happened in a minute, and it was all mixed up. The dogs were growling and barking. Martha had one of the men by the trouser leg, and Pincher had another. The girls were screaming like mad, and the strange boys shouted and laughed, little beasts. And then, suddenly, our pig man came round the corner, and two friends of his with him. He had gone and fetched them to take care of us if anything unpleasant occurred. It was very thoughtful and just like him. "Fetch the police!" cried the pig man in noble tones. And H.O. started running to do it, but the scoundrels struggled from under Dicky and our tramp, shook off the dogs and some bits of trouser, and fled heavily down the road. Our pig man said, "Get along home," to the disagreeable boys, and shooed them as if they were hens, and they went. H.O. ran back when they began to go up the road, and there we were, all standing breathless in tears on the scene of the late desperate engagement. Oswald gives you his word of honour that his and Dicky's tears were tears of pure rage. There are such things as tears of pure rage. Anyone who knows will tell you so. We picked up our own tramp and bathed the lump on his forehead with lemonade. The water in the zinc bath had been upset in the struggle. Then he and the pig man and his kind friends helped us carry our things home.
The pig man advised us on the way not to try these sort of kind actions without getting a grown-up to help us. We've been advised this before, but Now I really think we shall never try to be benevolent to the poor and needy again. At any rate, not unless we know them very well first.
We have seen our own tramp often since. The pigman gave him a job. He has got work to do at last. The pigman says he's not such a very bad chap, only he will fall asleep at the least drop of drink. We know that is his failing, we saw it at once. But it was lucky for us he fell asleep that day near our benevolent bar.
I will not go into what my father said about it all. There was a good deal in it about minding your own business. There generally is in most of the talkings to we get. But he gave our tramp a sovereign, and the pigman says he went to sleep on it for a solid week.
End of chapter 11. Read by Alan and Hazel Chant of Tunbridge in Kent, England.
With sound effects by Smudge, who tried to assist in the reading.